All right, diving in today, and we're going deep on Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. This one, you marked this as super powerful, and I got to say, going through the sources, it's clear why. It's like the way Frankl brings together, his experience. I mean, as a Holocaust survivor, right, with this incredibly insightful, like psychological framework. It's really something. And so today, what we're going to do is try to unpack that core message, the idea that even when like life is at its absolute worst, you still have this power to choose how you react, right? And maybe more importantly, to find meaning in it all. The book, it argues that it's not like the horrible stuff itself that breaks us. It's more like this feeling that our lives just don't have any meaning, no purpose in the middle of all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what makes Frankel's work hit so hard. It's rooted in this like extreme reality. He's not just, theorizing from some ivory tower. This is stuff that came out of like the worst imaginable suffering, and he wasn't just watching it happen. He was living it. And from that intense experience, he came up with these ideas about like human resilience that people still find so powerful today. Like you said, it all comes down to meaning, right? This idea that meaning is the engine, the thing that keeps us going.
So let's get into this idea of meaning, right?
Yeah.
Frankl developed this approach called logotherapy, and it's all about this will to meaning. How is this different from, say, what Freud was saying about pleasure? Or Adler's focus on power, like as the things that drive us. Did Frankl, did he ever see examples where people seem to be more motivated by pleasure or power to survive? And if so, how did he kind of square that with his own ideas?
That's a really sharp question. So, logotherapy, at its heart, it says that our main drive isn't to chase pleasure or try to control everything, even though, yeah, of course, those things are part of our lives. What Frankl saw in the camps was that the people who held on to some kind of purpose, maybe it was a loved one, a task they wanted to finish, a value they deeply believed in, those people were so much stronger mentally and physically than others. They weren't just trying to avoid pain or, grab whatever tiny bit of power they could. They were focused on this meaning they felt their life had, even when they were facing death. Now, you can argue that even chasing pleasure or power, for some people in those extreme conditions, it might have become like a twisted kind of meaning, right? Like a desperate way to feel some control or have a moment of relief. But Frankel's main point is that real resilience, the kind that lasts, it comes from connecting to something bigger than yourself, a meaning that you have to fulfill.
This is where it gets really challenging for me personally, this idea that suffering isn't just something to run away from, but that it can actually help you grow and change. It's a big shift for a lot of us, I think, because we're so used to avoiding anything uncomfortable. Are there are there any dangers with this way of thinking? Like, could it lead to, I don't know, almost romanticizing suffering?
Oh, you're hitting on something crucial there. Look, Frankel was absolutely not saying that people should go looking for suffering. His point is that when we do suffer, and we all do at some point, right? And it's the kind we can't escape, our attitude towards it is what matters. If we can find some meaning in that suffering, maybe it helps us understand others better, or it forces us to see what's truly important, or it helps us connect with other people who are hurting too. If we can do that, then yeah, it can be a powerful engine for growth. It's all about how we actively respond to the suffering, not the suffering itself. That's what determines whether it can transform us. And you're right, the danger is if we start glorifying suffering or even looking for it. That's totally missing the point of what Frankl was saying. The key is that the suffering has to be unavoidable, and then it's our choice how we deal with it.
So even in the concentration camps, with all that dehumanization, Frankl still believed that people had this freedom of inner choice, this control over their own thoughts and feelings. It's almost hard to imagine, right? Inner freedom in a place like that. How did Frankl actually see this playing out? What did it look like in real life?
It is remarkable what he observed. He talks about prisoners who, even though they barely had anything, they would share their tiny bit of bread with someone else or find ways to offer comfort. These small acts, they were a choice. They could have just given in to despair and only thought about themselves, but they didn't. They chose to hold on to their humanity, their compassion, this last of human freedoms, as he called it. It's this ability to decide moment by moment how you're going to react to what's happening to you. Are you going to let the horrors crush your spirit, or are you going to find a way to keep your dignity? This power to choose, even when you feel powerless, that's at the core of his whole philosophy.
And that brings us to his three avenues to meaning. He wasn't just saying grin and bear it. He was saying there are these pathways to actively finding meaning in life. Let's start with the first one, work, doing something significant. But in the camps, there wasn't really any real work, right? Not in the normal sense. So how did Frankl see this idea of meaningful work in that context?
Yeah, you're right. It's a stark contrast. In the camps, the work they were forced to do was often pointless and degrading. But Frankl, he had a broader view of what work could be. To him, it was any act, no matter how small, where a person could express their unique abilities or contribute something good, even in that limited situation. It could show up in surprising ways, like a prisoner who takes extra care cleaning their barracks. Not for themselves, but out of a sense of responsibility or a desire to create some order in all the chaos. Or someone who uses a skill they had before the war, maybe as a craftsman, to help other prisoners. The meaning wasn't about achieving some big result, but about engaging with their reality, limited as it was, in a way that felt purposeful, like they were contributing something, even if it was small.
The second avenue is love, connecting deeply with another person. It's hard to imagine how love could survive in such a brutal, isolating place. How did Frankl see love as a source of meaning in the camps?
You're absolutely right. The conditions were meant to tear people apart, but Frankl's own experiences and what he saw in others showed him that love as a source of meaning. It went beyond just being physically present. He wrote very movingly about how just the image of his wife helped him get through the darkest times. Even though they were separated and he didn't know what would happen, his love for her gave him an unshakable purpose, a reason to keep fighting. This shows us that for Frankl, love isn't just a feeling. It's this deep spiritual connection that can bring you comfort, strength, and a powerful reason to live, even when you're completely alone. It's about holding on to that inner connection and letting it fuel your inner strength.
And then the third avenue is suffering itself, facing adversity with courage. This ties in with what we were talking about before, about how suffering can help us grow. How does actually confronting suffering become a source of meaning for Frankl?
Exactly. When we face suffering, we can't avoid, loss, sickness, injustice, and we choose to face it bravely. With dignity and with purpose, we're tapping into a unique potential for meaning. It's not about enjoying pain or seeking it out, but about how we react when it comes. When we endure hardship with integrity, when we refuse to be broken by it, we're affirming our humanity, our ability to rise above even the worst situations. This act of courage, it becomes a testament to the strength of the human spirit and a deep source of meaning, both for the person going through it and maybe even for the people who see their strength.
Okay, let's move to some of those really powerful quotes from the book that stuck with you. The first one is, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." What's the main takeaway you get from that? How does it connect to everything we've been talking about? And how could our listener apply this in their own life?
That quote, I think, it boils down the idea of inner freedom into a challenge we can all take on. When you feel stuck in a situation you can't control, a tough job, a difficult relationship, an unexpected setback, whatever it is, this quote tells you to look inward. Instead of fighting a losing battle, it asks, what can you change about yourself, your attitude, your outlook, your habits to handle this better, or to find some peace even though it's tough? It's about taking charge in the one place you still have power, which is within yourself.
The next quote is so powerful. "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." This really shows how important purpose is when we're facing tough times. Why do you think this resonates with so many people?
I think it speaks to something fundamental about being human. When you have a strong reason to push through difficulty, a goal that matters, a commitment you believe in, a love that sustains you, the obstacles in your way, the how of your suffering, it becomes easier to bear. The why is like an anchor. It gives you strength and keeps you going, even when the how seems impossible to overcome. It suggests that figuring out and connecting with your core values, the things that give your life direction, that's essential for building resilience, for being able to face those inevitable challenges that life throws at you. What are your whys, the things that give your life direction?
And the last quote we want to look at is, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude." This really brings home that power of inner choice we talked about. What does this quote mean to you?
To me, this is the most profound and empowering message in the whole book. It's saying that even when you're facing the worst kind of oppression, your inner freedom, no one can touch that. Your ability to choose how you react to any situation, that's the last piece of your humanity that can't be taken away. It's a powerful reminder that your dignity, your sense of self, they don't depend on what's happening outside of you. Your possessions, your status, even your physical health. They depend on the choices you make inside. This inner freedom, it might be invisible, but it has the power to shape how you experience the world and whether you can find meaning in it.
So thinking about our lives today, why do you think man's search for meaning still speaks to people so strongly? The sources we looked at suggest that it gives people a sense of clarity, like spiritually, and helps them be more resilient emotionally, especially if they're dealing with loss or trying to figure out who they are or what their purpose is in this crazy world.
We live in a world that's constantly telling us to focus on outward success, material things, and chasing fleeting happiness. Frankel's work, it offers a powerful alternative to all that. It reminds us that true fulfillment, it doesn't come from avoiding discomfort or collecting things, but from finding and pursuing meaning within yourself and in your connection to something bigger than yourself. It gives you a framework for dealing with the suffering and uncertainty that are a part of life, not by trying to run away from them, but by finding purpose within them. In a culture that often prioritizes comfort and instant gratification, Frankel's insights challenge us to embrace responsibility, to actively seek and create meaning in our own lives, even when things are tough. It's a timeless guide to developing inner strength and resilience in a world that's always throwing us curveballs.
It really does feel like a message that speaks across generations and situations. And that brings us to our final thought for you, our listener. Thinking about Viktor Frankl's extraordinary experiences and how much he emphasized the search for meaning, we want to leave you with this question. What are the essential whys that drive you in your life right now? And maybe even more importantly, if you were stripped of all your comforts and supports, would those whys be strong enough to carry you through real hardship? It's a question worth really considering as you continue your own unique journey of finding meaning in the world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.